The room was cold, the kind of cold that crept into your bones and refused to leave. The lights above flickered, throwing long shadows on the metal walls. In the far corner, 6 human children sat close together, their eyes wide and filled with fear. The air smelled strange, like metal and smoke, and every sound echoed too loudly in the silence. None of them really understood where they were. The youngest, a small boy named Eli, hugged his knees to his chest. "Will they hurt us?" he whispered. His voice trembled like a leaf in the wind. Beside him, Anna, the oldest at 14, tried to stay calm. She had always been the brave one back home, the one who stood up for her little brother. But now, in this alien place, even she felt small. She put her arm around Eli. "No," she said softly. "Mom and Dad will come for us. Someone will." Outside the cell, 2 tall guards stood watch. Their bodies were covered in dark green armor that seemed to grow from their skin. They had long arms ending in sharp claws and insect-like faces with glowing yellow eyes. They spoke to each other in a series of harsh clicks and chirps, their voices cold and mechanical. The children couldn't understand the words, but they didn't need to. The tone alone was enough to fill them with dread. One of the guards pressed a hand to a control panel on the wall. A blue shimmer ran across the metal bars of the cell, the energy field that kept the humans trapped. Then the guard turned away, muttering something that sounded like a laugh. Eli whispered again. "Why did they take us?" Anna didn't know. None of them knew. One moment, they had been on a school trip to the research station near the asteroid belt, watching miners collect samples. The next, bright lights filled the sky and everything went wrong. Strange ships appeared out of nowhere, sleek and sharp like knives. They moved faster than anything human-made. The station alarms screamed, and before anyone could react, the children were gone, taken by force, their small shuttle pulled into the hold of an alien warship. Now, they sat on the alien planet Cardoon, deep within a military fortress that wasn't meant for human eyes. Hours passed. The children grew tired, hungry, and cold. Somewhere outside the cell, machines hummed. Once in a while, heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. The sound always made Eli flinch. Then suddenly the lights flickered again, this time brighter. The hum changed, growing louder. Something was happening. The guards stiffened and turned toward the door at the end of the corridor. A group of aliens in red armor entered, their movements quick and sharp. They spoke in angry tones. Anna leaned closer to the bars, trying to listen. She could tell one of them was shouting. The red-armored alien slammed a hand on the wall and pointed toward the children. Then the group stormed off, leaving the guards silent and uneasy. "Something's wrong," Anna whispered. "They're scared of something." Eli looked up at her. "Scared of what?" Anna didn't answer. But deep inside, she felt it, a change in the air. Something far away was moving toward them. Far above Cardoon, in the cold dark of space, a Terran fleet vessel drifted silently. Its hull was black and angular, built for war, not peace. Inside, the air buzzed with tension. Captain Mira Halden stood on the command deck, her eyes fixed on the holographic display before her. The screen showed a recording, blurry and faint, but the audio was clear enough. They took the children. The voice belonged to a miner from the station near the asteroid belt. His transmission had been sent hours ago, just before his ship vanished. The crew waited for Mira to speak. She didn't. Her face was calm, but her jaw was tight. Everyone on that ship knew what that silence meant. Finally, Mira turned toward her first officer, Commander Juno Kale. "Confirm the signal source." "Confirmed, Captain," Juno replied. "Origin, Cardoon Prime. It's under the control of the Zarth Dominion." Mira's eyes narrowed. "They took our children and brought them to a war world." "Yes, ma'am." For a long moment, no one moved. The hum of the engines filled the silence. Then Mira spoke again, her voice steady but low like distant thunder. "Prepare the fleet." The command deck came alive instantly. Officers moved to their stations, screens lit up, and alarms echoed softly in the background. Every soldier on the ship knew what that order meant. The Terran fleet was going to war. As Mira stood before the stars, her reflection in the glass looked almost ghostly. She wasn't a woman given to rage, but this was beyond reason. The Zarth Dominion had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. She clenched her fists. "They imprisoned our children," she said quietly, her words almost a whisper. "Do they understand what that means?" Behind her, the stars seemed to shimmer. The engines of the great warship roared to life, and one by one, other ships joined the formation. Sleek destroyers, heavy cruisers, and carriers armed with hundreds of fighters. The Black Fleet began to move. Back on Cardoon, the guards outside the children's cell looked up as a faint tremor shook the walls. At first it was small, like distant thunder. Then the sound grew, a deep rumble that made the floor vibrate. Anna's heart started to pound. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. Eli nodded. "What is it?" Anna's lips curved into a trembling smile. "That," she said softly, "is homecoming for us." Outside, in the night sky of Cardoon, the first Terran ships broke through the atmosphere. The storm had arrived. The great hall of Cardoon shimmered like liquid glass. Tall black pillars curved upward, etched with glowing runes that pulsed softly like veins of light. In the center sat the High Council of the Zarth Dominion, 12 towering insectoid figures, their chitin plates polished, their eyes bright and cold. They gathered in a circle around a floating sphere that projected the image of Earth's fleet movements. Lines of data and glowing dots traced human activity along the outer rim of known space. Warlord Zuktar, the largest among them, leaned forward. His voice buzzed through the chamber. "The humans have not replied to our transmission. Their ships remain near their colonies, but they make no sign of war." The advisor of records, thin and spidery, clacked her mandibles. "Perhaps they know better. Perhaps they fear us." A low ripple of laughter moved through the council. The sound was cold, metallic, cruel. "Fear," said Chancellor Drayle, tapping one claw against the sphere. "These primates? They are driven by emotion, not wisdom. They cry when they lose one. They do not think as we do." Warlord Zuktar gave a sharp nod. "Then it was right to take their offspring. A lesson in obedience. They claim to protect every colony. They will now learn what happens when they trespass." But from the far end of the table, a young officer spoke up. His name was Vren, one of the newer council aides. His carapace was a dull green, still unscarred from battle. His voice shook slightly as he spoke. "Warlord, I must speak." Zuktar turned his yellow eyes toward him. "You are not invited to." Still, Vren didn't back down. "The humans, they are not as we think. My brother fought at Cygna Rift. He saw what they did when one of their ships was destroyed. The humans did not retreat. They charged. Even when half their fleet was lost, they kept fighting. They do not stop," Drayle hissed in amusement. "And yet they are weak. They bleed easily. Their ships are slow." "Yes," Vren said, "but they remember." He looked around the chamber, his voice rising with quiet courage. "They never forget what is taken from them." Silence followed. The others stared at him, unmoving. Then Zuktar rose from his seat, towering above him. "You question the Dominion?" Vren's mandibles twitched. "I question wisdom that ignores fire when it sees smoke." The warlord slammed a claw on the table. "Enough!" The energy sphere flickered, and the sound of the impact echoed through the hall. "The humans are impulsive creatures. They will protest, they will send their diplomats, and then they will kneel, as every weak species does." "You will see," the council murmured in agreement. Zuktar's word was final. But far above them, orbiting Cardoon, a small outpost station caught a faint reading, a blip at the edge of the system. A sensor officer looked at his console, confused. "Sir, I'm detecting unidentified ships, dozens. They just appeared, out of hyperspace." The commander leaned closer. "Show me." The holographic screen lit up with cold blue light. The images formed shapes, angular hulls, massive engines, human signatures. The computer began to ping in alarm. "Terran fleet! Incoming!" The commander froze. "That's impossible. They can't be this far out." But then, the first transmission came through. It was short, one word. "Return them." Back in the council hall, alarms began to echo through the capital. Red lights flashed across the chamber. The communication officers rushed in, panic written even in their alien movements. "Warlord!" one of them cried. "The humans are here. They're in orbit! Zuktar rose from his throne, disbelief twisting his expression. How many? 50. No, 60 ships, sir. All armed. They are in attack formation, the Chancellor hissed. Impossible! They can't mobilize that fast. The officer hesitated, then added, and their ships? They are broadcasting no code, no warning. Only silence. That silence spread across the chamber, heavy and dark. Vren, the young aide, looked around, his voice barely a whisper. They came for the children! Zuktar slammed his claw on the table again, cracking the stone. Prepare defenses! Send word to the fleet. They dare bring war to Khardun. They will regret it. As the council scrambled, Vren glanced toward the projection screen. He could see them now, dozens of human ships, black as the void, gliding toward the planet. Their engines burned white-hot. There was something terrifying about how quiet they were. No threats, no diplomacy, just a steady, unstoppable approach. Sir, the communication officer whispered. One of their ships is hailing us, Zuktar snapped. Put it through, the hologram shimmered, revealing Captain Mira Halden standing on the bridge of her flagship. Her armor gleamed under the light. Her eyes were steady, cold and fierce. Zuktar tried to sound powerful. Human captain, you violate Dominion space. You will withdraw your fleet or face Mira's voice cut through like ice. You took our children. Her tone was calm, but every word carried weight. Zuktar hissed. They trespassed on restricted ground. They broke our laws. Mira stepped closer to the camera. Her face filled the screen. They were children. Silence fell. Even the council dared not breathe. Then she said the words that every being in that room would remember for the rest of their lives. You have 1 hour to release them. After that, Khardun learns what happens when you cage humanity's future. The transmission ended. Zuktar roared, his voice echoing through the hall. Prepare the fleet. Destroy them all! But in the corner, Vren whispered to himself, trembling as the ground began to hum with the vibration of the approaching warships. She gave you a warning. Outside, the first Terran ships unfolded their weapons. The storm that would be remembered in every star system for centuries was about to begin. The darkness above Khardun split open like a wound in the sky. The stars vanished as the Terran fleet descended, black hulls gliding through the void, silent and cold. Each ship was a blade, and together they formed a storm. Their engines burned white and steady, and even the light they cast seemed to carry warning. From the surface, the alien cities looked up. The people of Khardun had seen many ships before, traders, raiders, explorers, but never like these. These were not ships of negotiation. They were machines of judgment. High Warlord Zuktar stood at the fortress balcony, staring into the rising light of the invasion. His claws dug into the stone rail. So they came, he hissed. They truly came. Behind him, his officers stood frozen. The air smelled of fear, thick and sour, even to alien senses. Activate the planetary shields, Zuktar ordered. Prepare the orbital cannons. We will show them what it means to challenge the Dominion. The city below roared to life. Engines whined, sirens blared, the ground shook as batteries rose from the soil. Blue light shimmered above them as the shield domes activated, stretching over the capital like a glass sky. But in orbit, the human fleet didn't slow. On the bridge of the flagship TSS Dauntless, Captain Mira Halden stood before the panoramic view of the planet. Her face was calm, eyes sharp. Around her, the crew moved with quiet precision. No shouting, no chaos, only focus. Commander Juno Kale approached. All ships in formation. Weapons charged, Mira nodded once. Transmit final warning. The communications officer turned toward her. Same message, Captain? Same message. The officer pressed a control, and across the system, every Zarth ship, every base, every command post received the same transmission. Return them. No introduction. No threat. Just the same single word. Seconds passed. No reply. Then the enemy opened fire. From the surface, the alien cannons lit up the sky. Beams of plasma arced upward, striking the human ships like spears of fire. But the Terran fleet did not scatter. They moved together, turning with perfect rhythm. Their counterfire began as a whisper, then became a roar. Railgun slugs, invisible at first, faster than light, tore through the sky, shattering the upper defense stations in a heartbeat. Orbital platforms crumbled like dust. One alien commander screamed through the comms, "They're not aiming to disable. They're erasing our fleet!" Zuktar roared back, "Then fight harder!" But his voice was drowned in static. The human bombardment was breaking through even the planet's ionosphere. In the detention block deep below the capital, the children felt the tremors first. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered red. Eli clung to Anna's arm. "What's happening?" Anna could hear it, the distant thunder, like giants walking above. The ground rumbled again, this time stronger. "It's them," she whispered. "They're here!" The guards outside shouted, running down the corridor. One stopped and slammed a control panel, sealing the doors. The energy walls crackled. Anna grabbed the bars and shouted, "Don't leave us here!" But the aliens were already gone. The sound of explosions rolled closer. Up above, Mira watched the readouts flood her display. The Zarth defenses were collapsing. Still, her expression stayed calm, but her voice had a quiet fire. "Commander Kale," she said, "target only military sites. Leave the civilian sectors untouched." Juno nodded. "Understood." "But the shield over the capital, it's strong!" "We can't penetrate without heavy fire." Mira stared at the glowing sphere on her screen, the alien city, pulsing under its blue shield. Somewhere down there, human children were still imprisoned. She took a slow breath. "Then we focus. Channel power from the auxiliary reactors." "Ma'am, that'll overheat the main guns." "I know." The crew obeyed without question. That was the Terran way. Duty first, hesitation later. In the alien control tower, Zuktar watched in disbelief as one by one their defense lines broke. How are they doing this?" he growled. An officer turned to him, shaking. "Their weapons are stronger than our projections. Their ships, they're absorbing our plasma fire. It's like they were built for this." Zuktar's claws clenched. No species is built for war this well. But as he said it, he knew he was wrong. Humans were. The floor shook. A tremor split through the command center. Someone screamed. Then, above the city, the Terran flagship's main gun fired. A single beam of white energy struck the sky. The capital's blue shield flared, screaming as it strained against the impact. Sparks rained down like burning stars. Inside the fortress, the lights burst. Systems failed. The entire planet seemed to shudder. The shield held for one breath. Two. Then, with a sound like cracking ice, it shattered. The beam cut straight through the capital's main defense tower, turning it into molten metal. Zuktar fell to his knees, staring at the wreckage. His people screamed around him. He turned toward the sky, toward that fleet of black ships that now hovered above them, unmoving, watching. "They will destroy us all," he whispered. On the Dauntless, Mira gave her next order, quiet but final. "Deploy ground teams. Target? Children first." As the dropships launched, streaking through the smoke-filled sky, the alien world below began to burn. But above it all, one message echoed across the comms, carried by every Terran ship. "This is humanity. You took what we love. Now you will learn the cost. Now you will learn the cost." Smoke still rose from the shattered towers of Khardoon's capital. The sky burned orange, streaked with falling debris that glowed like dying stars. In the streets, alien soldiers scrambled through the ruins, dragging wounded comrades to shelter. The war had lasted only hours, yet the Dominion's pride, built over centuries, was now ash and silence. Above the planet, the Terran fleet held position. Dozens of ships floated in perfect formation, their weapons still glowing with residual heat. But now they waited. Humanity had not come to conquer. They had come for judgment. On board the TSS Dauntless, Captain Mira Halden stood in the center of her bridge, staring at the hollow planet below. Her reflection shimmered on the viewport glass. Around her, the crew moved quietly, eyes tired but focused. Commander Juno Kyle approached. "Ground teams report success, ma'am. The first group of children has been recovered. They're alive." Mira exhaled slowly, her shoulders relaxing a fraction. All of them? Not yet. There are still 3 unaccounted for. We're tracking signals in the southern complex. Her hands clenched behind her back. Find them. Yes, Captain. The comms officer turned. Incoming transmission, ma'am. Direct channel from the Zarth Dominion Council. They're requesting parley. The bridge fell silent. Mira's expression didn't change, but her voice dropped lower. Put them through. The hologram shimmered into life in front of her, projecting the grand chamber of the Dominion Council. The image was damaged by static, the edges flickering from the bombardment. Zuktar stood at the center, his armor scorched, his expression unreadable. Around him, the surviving counselors gathered, their eyes wide with the disbelief of defeat. Mira Halden, Zuktar began, his tone struggling between pride and fear. You have broken our defenses, destroyed our fleets. What do you seek now? Revenge? Mira's voice was calm. We came for our children. Zuktar's mandibles clicked. They were found trespassing in restricted airspace. According to Dominion law, their detainment was lawful. Mira tilted her head slightly. Lawful? They entered our territory without permission. They were children, she said, each word sharp as glass. Zuktar's voice grew defensive. We meant them no harm. They were unharmed until your attack began. You did this! For a moment, Mira said nothing. The bridge crew could feel the temperature drop. Then she spoke, softly but clear enough to be heard across galaxies. You took the innocent. You caged the helpless. You broke a boundary that no species should ever cross. We came not for vengeance, but for a lesson, Zuktar hissed. A lesson? You burned our cities! You slaughtered soldiers who could not match you. Mira stepped closer to the projection. You call them soldiers. I call them jailers. Her eyes were calm, but there was something terrible in that calmness. A quiet fury colder than fire. You think you understand strength, warlord, she said. But you confuse cruelty with power. Humanity learned long ago. Those are not the same thing, Zuktar's claws flexed. You will regret this. The Dominion will rebuild. We will strike back. Mira didn't blink. Then we will remind you again. The chamber erupted in angry shouts. Alien voices clicked and hissed in rage. But Mira raised one hand, and the sound of her voice cut through them all. You will release every human you've taken. You will return our children. And you will remember this day every time you look at the sky. Zuktar spat. And if we refuse? Mira's tone dropped to a whisper that made even her crew shiver. Then Cardoon becomes a memory. For a long moment, no one spoke. Even Zuktar could feel the weight in her voice, the certainty of it. He realized then that these creatures, these humans, were not the soft, emotional species the Dominion believed them to be. They were something far worse. They were patient. Finally, Zuktar broke eye contact. We will discuss your demands. The transmission cut. On the bridge, silence lingered. The hum of the engines filled the space between heartbeats. Commander Kyle looked at Mira. Do you believe they'll give them back? Mira shook her head. No, they're too proud. They'll stall, hoping we'll leave. So what do? Mira turned toward the viewport. Below, the alien capital burned like an ember. We give them one last chance. She pressed a command key on the console. Transmit again. Fleet-wide and planetary broadcast. A few seconds later, her voice echoed across Cardoon, carried on every frequency, translated into every language. This is Captain Mira Halden of the Terran Fleet. You imprisoned our children. You've seen what that costs. You have 1 hour to comply. After that, there will be nothing left to discuss. The message repeated across every radio, every comm station, every alien ear. On the surface, soldiers stopped fighting. Civilians stared at the sky. Mothers covered their children's ears, and old warriors whispered prayers they hadn't spoken in decades. In the council chamber, Zuktar sat frozen. The humans hadn't come to negotiate. They had come to warn. Back aboard the Dauntless, Mira walked to the viewport again. The planet's surface shimmered in the distance. Her reflection stared back at her. Calm, cold, human. Kale stood beside her. If they don't surrender, Captain? She didn't hesitate. Then we teach them the price. As the minutes ticked away, the fleet waited in silence. Ships floated like sentinels among the stars, their weapons humming quietly in the dark. The countdown continued, 50 minutes, 40, 30, and down below, buried in the broken prison complex, 3 small signals still pulsed faintly, 3 human children still waiting for rescue. Mira watched the timer without blinking. Her voice, when she finally spoke again, was barely above a whisper. "Hold position. When the hour ends, we end this world. We end this world." The countdown reached 0. From orbit, the Terran fleet moved as one, black hulls glowing under the pale light of Cardoon's twin moons. They did not speak. They did not celebrate. The bridge of every ship was silent, filled with the steady hum of systems waiting for the next command. Captain Mira Halden stood on the bridge of the TSS Dauntless, her hands resting lightly behind her back. In front of her, the tactical display showed the alien capital still burning. "Captain," Commander Kyle said quietly, "no word from the Dominion Council." Mira's eyes stayed fixed on the planet. "Then they've chosen." Outside, space seemed to tremble as thousands of weapons locked onto their targets. Across the fleet, every ship charged its guns in perfect rhythm, forming a storm of light that spanned the void. "Order confirmed?" Kale asked. "Confirmed," Mira said. "Begin Phase 2. The first strike began with silence. A single flash, white and pure, pierced the sky above Cardoon's capital. Then came the sound. A deep, rolling thunder that tore across the heavens as railgun slugs, plasma lances, and kinetic missiles rained down together. The ground erupted. Towers melted. Defense walls disintegrated. The Dominion's greatest fortress fell in less than a minute. Alien soldiers screamed orders that no one could follow. The shield generators failed almost instantly, exploding in showers of blue flame. The planet's crust split under the force of orbital bombardment. And yet, through the chaos, humanity's precision remained cold and exact. The strikes avoided hospitals, avoided civilian centers. The Terrans didn't kill for revenge. They destroyed only what had dared to stand between them and their children. The Dominion's pride was the only casualty they sought to erase completely. In the council bunker below the capital, Warlord Zuktar and his advisors watched the destruction from holographic screens. "Their once grand city was vanishing before their eyes. Shut down the feed!" One of them screamed. "Shut it down!" Zuktar didn't move. His eyes were locked on the image of a Terran ship breaking through the clouds. It wasn't just a war machine, it was a symbol. Cold, merciless, beautiful in its own way. "They're not fighting for power," Zuktar muttered. "They're fighting for blood." "No, my lord," said Vren, the young officer beside him. His voice trembled, but his eyes were steady. "They're fighting for family." Zuktar turned toward him, furious. "You call this justice?" Vren shook his head. "No, this is warning." Before Zuktar could reply, the bunker shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling. The lights flickered red, then died. "They've breached the command district," someone shouted. Zuktar bared his teeth. "Prepare for ground combat." But even as he said it, he knew it was useless. The human dropships descended like falling stars, cutting through the smoke. Each carried squads of Terran Marines in black armor, their visors glowing faintly blue. They hit the ground running. Their movements were smooth, efficient, each soldier silent, eyes scanning, weapons ready. In the southern complex, a squad breached the alien prison. The walls still hummed with energy from the shield generators. Inside, the last 3 human children waited in the dark. When the door exploded open, light flooded the room. The children screamed, shielding their eyes. "Easy!" a voice called through the smoke. "We're here to take you home." A Marine stepped forward, kneeling. His armor was battered, his voice gentle. He removed his helmet, a young man with tired eyes. He smiled. "It's over. You're safe now." The smallest child, a girl, looked at him with disbelief. "You came for us?" He nodded once. "Always." Above the surface, the fleet held fire. The bombardment stopped as soon as the rescue signals confirmed. On the Dauntless, Mira stood at the command rail, watching the live feed. The moment she saw the children lifted from the prison, her shoulders relaxed for the first time since the war began. "Signal all ships," she said. "Stand down primary weapons." Begin extraction, Kyle smiled faintly. You're sure they'll let us go after this? Mira didn't answer for a long moment. Then quietly, they'll let us go because they have no choice. She turned to face her crew. We've shown them what humanity does when its future is threatened. That's enough. In the ruins of the capital, Zuktar and Vren emerged from the broken bunker. The air was thick with dust and the faint smell of ozone. Above them, the Terran ships hovered like gods of war, their engines whispering through the clouds. Zuktar stared up, his voice hollow. All this for 6 small ones? Vren glanced at him. You still don't understand, do you? Zuktar turned, snarling. Understand what? That to humans, Vren said softly. Those 6 are their entire world. He looked toward the sky as the Terran ships began to withdraw, their engines burning trails of white across the horizon. And they would burn 1,000 worlds to keep that world safe. As the last dropships lifted off, Mira stood in silence. Below, the planet lay in ruin, its pride shattered, its arrogance turned to dust. Commander Kale spoke quietly. Captain, what do we tell Earth? Mira looked out into the void. Tell them our children are home. And tell the stars, she paused, her voice soft, that humanity remembers. The fleet turned toward the stars and vanished into the dark, leaving only silence behind. And in that silence, every species that had watched the battle recorded one simple truth in their history logs. You do not cage human children, ever. Children, ever. Khardun was quiet. The smoke still rose in thin spirals toward the stars, and where the capital once stood, there was only ruin. The fires had died, but the smell of ash lingered. The Terran fleet had gone. Their engines had faded into silence, leaving only the whisper of the wind through broken streets. Yet even in their absence, their shadow remained. Warlord Zuktar walked through the wreckage with his soldiers. His armor was cracked, his face scorched from heat, but he lived, and that felt more like punishment than victory. Around him, the once mighty banners of the Dominion lay torn in the dirt. Vren followed close behind. He no longer carried a weapon. His eyes were distant, staring at the black sky where the human ships had vanished. They spared us, he murmured. Zuktar snarled. Spared? They destroyed our defenses, our fleet, our pride. They could have destroyed us, Vren replied softly. All of us. But they didn't. The warlord turned on him, anger trembling in his voice. You admire them? I understand them, Vren said. And that's worse. News of Khardun's fall spread like wildfire through the stars. On the trade moons of Vega 9, merchants whispered the story to each other in fear. The humans came for their young. In the academies of the Drusk Collective, scholars replayed battle footage, studying the efficiency, the silence, the precision, how an entire world could be broken without a single wasted shot. And across the galaxy, a new phrase entered the universal language, the Terran price. It meant consequence. It meant fury wrapped in discipline. It meant that if you harmed a human child, you didn't face a war. You faced extinction. Far from Khardun, in a quiet orbital hospital above Mars, the rescued children lay in recovery. The room was soft and warm. Sunlight filtered through wide windows that showed the curve of Earth below. Captain Mira Halden stood beside their beds. The children were asleep, their faces calm at last. One of them, Eli, stirred slightly, opening his eyes. Are we home? He asked in a small voice. Almost, Mira said. He blinked slowly. Did you find them? The bad ones? Mira paused. Yes. Did you stop them? Her voice softened. They won't hurt anyone again. Eli nodded once, his eyelids drooping. Good. He drifted back to sleep. Mira stood there for a long time, her reflection faint in the window glass. Below, Earth glowed blue and peaceful, a world that didn't yet know how close it had come to losing part of its future. Commander Kale stepped in quietly. The Council's waiting, Captain. They want your statement. Mira didn't turn. They'll want to know if I regret it. Kale hesitated. Do you? She finally looked up. Her eyes were tired but clear. No. But I wish it had been unnecessary. On Cardoon, weeks later, the Dominion Council gathered in the ruins of their hall. The new chancellor, a cautious elder named Serect, spoke with a trembling voice. Our fleets are gone, our stations silent. Even our allies refuse to answer our calls. Zuktar sat apart, silent and broken. Serect continued. The Terrans have sent terms. No tribute, no demands, only a message. The chamber hushed. He pressed a claw to the control panel. The message played. It was Captain Mira's voice, calm, human, unmistakable. We seek no empire. We seek no conquest. But know this. Those who harm our children, who steal our future, will meet the past we left behind, fire and ruin. Learn from this, and we will never meet again. The message ended. Silence followed. Zuktar stood slowly. His voice was low, almost reverent. They could have claimed our worlds. They could have enslaved us. Instead, they gave us mercy. Mercy? Serect repeated bitterly. Zuktar looked toward the sky through the shattered ceiling. Yes, mercy born of fury. That is what makes them terrifying. Vren stepped forward. Then let us remember it. Let no one forget what we brought upon ourselves. The council agreed. Not out of respect, but out of fear. Months later, in the deep reaches of space, a Zarth trading ship crossed paths with a Terran patrol vessel. Both crews watched each other through the void, no words exchanged. The Zarth captain, once proud, gave the order to lower weapons. The humans responded by blinking their running lights twice, a silent sign of acknowledgement. Then both ships continued on their way. That was how peace began, not with treaties or words, but with mutual understanding of what could have been. On Mars, Mira stood on the observation deck, watching the sun rise over the red horizon. Her uniform was clean again, her metals polished, but the fire in her heart had dimmed to something quieter. Kyle joined her, hands behind his back. Command says the Dominion has pulled back from human borders. They've started rebuilding. Good, she said. He studied her face. You don't look pleased. I'm not sure I ever will be, she replied. I saw their cities burn, Kale. I gave the order. You also saved our people. She nodded slowly. That's what terrifies me, that both can be true. They stood in silence, watching the dawn spread across the red plains. Somewhere far from Mars, a lone Zarth scientist recorded his thoughts for the next generation. The humans do not conquer for gain. They fight for memory, for the promise that no one will ever cage their young again. They are both the storm and the shelter, and those who meet them must decide, will we face their wrath or earn their respect? He paused, looking up at the stars. This was the reckoning, and it was only the beginning. And it was only the beginning. Time passed. Months turned to years, and the fires of Cardoon became history. The ashes cooled, and the galaxy moved on, or at least pretended to. But no world truly forgot. Every species had seen what the humans could do when provoked. They had watched entire fleets vanish beneath the silent wrath of a race that claimed no empire and no throne, only their right to protect their own. The story spread through every colony, every star station, every distant frontier where voices gathered to trade and tell tales. The story was always the same, though the words changed. They came for their children. They burned a world for them. And then they left. On the far side of the galaxy, on a quiet human colony called Meridian's Reach, children played under a sky streaked with the faint glow of nebulae. Their laughter carried on the wind. The war was a distant echo here, something only the adults whispered about after dark. Captain Mira Halden had retired. Her ship, the Dauntless, now rested in orbit as a memorial, its hull polished silver beneath the suns. She spent her days teaching cadets at the local academy, walking among gardens instead of battlefields. But sometimes, when the night was still, she would stand at the edge of the observation cliffs and look up at the stars. She knew that out there, beyond human borders, the galaxy still remembered her name, though not as a person. To them, Mira Halden had become a warning, a legend, and perhaps even a ghost. One evening, as she stood watching the horizon, a familiar voice called from behind her. "Commander Kyle to see you, Captain," he said with a faint smile. He was older now, his hair silver at the edges, his uniform worn but neat. "You're not my commander anymore," Mira said, returning the smile. He stepped beside her, hands clasped behind his back. Old habits die hard. They watched the twin moons rise. The light danced on the water below. Kyle broke the silence first. "They still talk about Cardoon, you know. The council calls it the Day of Reckoning." "I know," she said quietly. "They say the Zarth Dominion disbanded their war fleets last year. Their new leader sent an envoy to Earth, with gifts, not demands." Mira's gaze stayed on the stars. "Fear makes peace, but only for a while. Respect lasts longer," Kyle nodded. "And do you think they respect us?" She took a long breath. "They respect what they saw. Whether they understand it, I don't know." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe that's enough." Light years away, in the rebuilt city of Cardoon Prime, a statue stood in the center of the new Grand Hall. It was not of a Zarth hero, nor of their gods, but of a simple shape, a human child, reaching upward, one hand extended toward the stars. Beneath it, in alien script, the inscription read, "Remember mercy before fear. Remember children before power." Each year the Zarth people gathered at that monument. Their elders told the story again, not to stoke hatred, but to remind them of what nearly destroyed them. And always, the story began the same way. Once we took what was not ours. We thought them weak. We learned the truth. In the great archives of the Galactic Conquered, historians studied the war logs of that year. They noted with confusion that the Terrans never colonized the conquered world, never claimed spoils, never sent demands. Instead, they built something else, a vast communications beacon at the edge of human space. It transmitted one message once every year to all neighboring systems. The message was simple. "We remember our children." No threat followed. No explanation. Just that one line. The message came to be known as the Vow. On Meridian's Reach, Mira sat by the fire outside her home. The night air was cool, and the stars shimmered like old memories. A knock came at her door. When she opened it, she found Eli, older now, tall, dressed in the uniform of a cadet. "Captain," he said, smiling shyly. "I didn't know if you'd remember me," Mira smiled. "How could I forget?" He stepped inside, holding something wrapped in cloth. "They told us about you at the academy, about the day you came for us. I wanted to thank you." He unwrapped the cloth to reveal a small piece of metal, a fragment of the Dauntless, engraved with a single word: home. Mira took it in her hands. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she said softly, "You're the reason we fought, Eli, you and all the others. Never forget that." "I won't," he said. When he left, Mira looked once more toward the sky. There, just visible through the clouds, was the faint line of a Terran ship moving between the stars. A patrol, perhaps, or maybe a convoy. To anyone else, it was just a distant light, but to her, it was something else. A promise. Humanity would never start the fire, but they would always be ready to end it. And somewhere out there, in 1,000 alien tongues, the story was still being told. The story of a small species from a blue world who taught the galaxy the cost of cruelty. In the centuries that followed, the tale of the outrage of Cardoon became legend. Children of every world learned its ending. Do not harm what humans love, for they will cross the stars to make it right. And in that simple truth, etched across the stars themselves, the galaxy found peace, not born of fear, but of understanding. Because at last, they knew what humanity truly was, not conquerors, not monsters, not gods, just people who would burn the heavens to keep their children safe. The heavens to keep their children safe.